Conversation 6 is the bonding through touch and sex conversation. The goal here is to create a conversation to enhance lovemaking, to turn sex into a safe adventure and erotic play. It's also important to create a conversation where you can safely address sexual problems and any negative patterns that come up in your sexual relationship. Remember, in bed, practice and emotional presence makes perfect. From what you guys already told me about your relationship, I mean, your sexual relationship all swept up in your demon dialogue, right? So for a long time, there wasn't very much sex happening at all, right? And the way I understand that is that you would be angry and he would be withdrawn, but the one place that Blair would come and reach for you would be in bed, and then you would turn him down because you'd say, no, you know, I don't feel turned on, right? Which, of course, if you're feeling angry and upset and somehow not close, it's hard for you to want to make love. So then that would sort of get all swept up in your demon dialogue, right? But why don't we talk about that a little bit and then maybe talk about how you fix that and what sex is like now for you?
Sure. I guess, you know, I was of the view that sex is a barometer for the relationship, you know, and the amount of sex that you're having would give you a sense of how well the relationship is going. And I think, you know, since going through the process here and reading the chapters in Hold Me Tight and resolving a lot of the other issues that were going on, we've both realized that sex, you know, it's obviously a very important component to a happy relationship, but it's not taking this big, it's not like the big elephant in the room anymore. And it's
when it's going badly, it really does become an elephant in the room. It sort of takes over everything.
Yeah.
Well, the way it worked for us was that, you know, when we did, you know, go through our most distressed periods in our relationship, I felt that, you know, I was getting no empathy, no compassion, no understanding for what I was going through from Blair at all, and that, you know, we were distant, we were arguing, but then he'd want to have sex with me, and you know, for me, the two things were totally incongruous. You know, I could not get turned on in any way, shape, or form when I was pissed off at you, and so, you know, I felt that actually fed into the fact that you had no compassion. You were totally clueless why I wouldn't want to have sex with you when you didn't listen to me and you didn't empathize with me. And so that it was just sort of another piece of the puzzle for me. And so, yeah, you know, we did go through a couple of years where the sex was infrequent, and when it happened, it wasn't that great. You know, it was usually because I felt guilty, and for me...
So it was kind of mechanical.
It was mechanical, and it certainly wasn't authentic. And it was very different from, you know, the beginning of our relationship, which was very passionate and very physical and very fulfilling.
Right, so it was sort of like sealed-off sex. I know I talk in the book about the 3 kinds of sex, and that when you're caught in those demon dialogues, you know, it's when the sex does happen, it's sort of everybody's protecting themselves. It's hard to be really turned on when you're wearing your armor, right? And so it sort of ends up being sealed off sex, which isn't actually very satisfying. Not for you, and I guess not for you either.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as you said, sex was my way of reaching out to Arwen, and being rebuffed, you know, was hard, you know, and that had an impact on the wider relationship because it was all intertwined. And the sealed off sex, you know, yeah, I mean, I think men can compartmentalize it a bit more, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's better than nothing, and but it's true, it's not as satisfying as what otherwise could be. And so you know, I was finding that, okay, well, I know at least I'm getting some sex now and then I thought maybe this is the way, maybe marriage kills sex, you know, and intimacy. that way. And, you know, you hear all these jokes about it, and there's, you know, people in society who will say that, yeah, you know, oh, you're married, I'm sorry, I'm probably not having sex anymore. And, you know, you start to think, oh, maybe that's just the way it is, and maybe I should just sort of accept that and find some other hobbies or something, you know.
But what was that like for you? That's a hopeless place to be, isn't it? To say, well, this is just the way it is. You know, that feeling of really being intimately connected and passionate is gone forever. We've lost it. That's just, what was that like for you to feel that?
Well, the hardest thing and the weirdest thing was that it got to the point where neither of us were really reaching out for each other to make love anymore. And because after I had been sort of rebuffed so many times, not knowing the true reasons why Arwen wasn't emotionally connected to me and wasn't into this. And, you know, I think that was her weapon as well. And
she was going to have an impact on you, and to say no was one way of doing it.
Yeah. And, you know, she used it when she needed to, and to defend her emotional space, and to, I think, you know, as a way to try and get me to realize or to perk up and, you know, take notice of her inner feelings. But that didn't work. It just served to push me away further, to the point where neither of us were reaching out for each other. And then we didn't know how to initiate sex anymore. It was very, so you just became awkward, you know?
You were losing the ability to just engage in that dance. Right?
Yeah.
And the amazing thing for me is that, you know, I thought Blair just wanted an orgasm. I had no idea that I had no idea that your emotional outlet, that the way that you needed to connect to me emotionally, because you weren't really, you know, like I think many people, and like myself, you weren't in touch with your real feelings. And so the only way you knew how to reach out emotionally to me was through sex. And, you know, I had no idea. And that's sort of the funny, ironic thing about
you didn't see it that way.
I had absolutely not.
You just saw that he wanted to get rid of sexual tension.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that way, it felt even more insulting. If I had known, you know, if I had known that this was your way of reaching out emotionally and not just physically, it would have, I hope, been a completely different story.
Right.
It's just so funny.
Well, that is also part of sort of the whole thing that society teaches, right? Which is the men are obsessed with sex, and the man wants orgasm, and, you know, it really, that's what it's about. So then the woman says, you don't really want me, you just want orgasm. And if you're not giving me, you know, if you're not giving yourself to me in other places, you know, it's hard for me to respond in bed. But actually, the guy's trying to reach out with that. Yeah.
That was I think one of the biggest epiphanies of this whole process for me was that very thing. And I think it's something that for some reason in our society we just don't get. And it's really, really important.
Right.
So, you know, I think that I was just feeling really closed off, and both of us were, and we got to the point where we were more like roommates. I was really dedicated to childcare, and Blair was really dedicated to his work, and we were just getting further and further and further apart.
I think it's allowed us to really turn the corner, and, you know, now it's we're having great sex. I mean, love making, you know, not just sex. I mean, it's very fulfilling and rewarding, and there is this sense of a real emotional attachment there that wasn't there before we started this process during our cycle. And yeah, you know,
I think it's become a much less loaded issue for us because we have safe emotional outlets together other than sex. It's not the be-all and end-all that it was for you, and it's not the hot issue that it was for me.
So then when somebody doesn't want to make love,